Hi, I'm Nick, and today I'm going to tell you about clauses. This is a grammar-heavy video, and it's also going to be a very long video. At least I think it is. So if you need to go back and watch certain parts over again, or if you want to watch this in different parts over a period of time, you should probably do that. So clauses are the building blocks of sentences. There's some things you should know before you start this video. You should know the basic verb tenses: present, past, progressive, future tense, how they work, what they mean, and writing sentences in general. Clauses are useful, or knowing about clauses is useful, because they come in handy with writing sentences in paragraphs and in essays. You should know a little bit about them to know certain rules that go with them, and it also helps you to write different kinds of sentences and to understand different kinds of sentences if you know a little bit about clauses. So first I'm going to ask you what these sentences mean. I play. What do you think that sentence means? To me, this sentence means that this is a fact. I do a thing. I play. I might play the guitar. I might play video games. But whatever it is, I play. It's not right now at this second, but it's just something that I do in general, like a habit. I might do it today and tomorrow, yesterday, different times. While I play, you work. What does that sentence mean to you? To me, it can mean one of two things. One, it can mean that I'm going to play, and then you're going to work at the same time. Or it means that we both have these habits. I play and you work. The word while is showing that either these are happening at the same time or they're different. Playing and working is different. What does this sentence mean to you? To me, it means what this sentence meant, at least this part, but it also means that there's someone else. She is watching, or she watches us while we do these things. Or it just means that we do these separate things and they happen to be different sorts of things. What is a sentence? Is a sentence a group of words? Or is it a group of words ending in a period? Or is it another word for consciousness? Or is it a group of words with a subject, a verb, and a complete thought? This is the best definition of a sentence on this slide. These all mean things, but they're not quite as good as this definition. It's true that a sentence is a group of words, and it's true that some sentences end with periods, a little point mark here. This is referring to a different word, but the best definition here is that a group of words with a subject, a verb, and a complete thought is a sentence. I'm using periods here for these, but you shouldn't think that these are actually complete sentences. The periods are just there to show that this line is ending. Is this a sentence or not? This is a sentence. It has a subject, and it has a verb, and it has a complete thought. A complete thought means that we understand it by itself. We don't need other words to explain it. We could add more words to be more specific, but this by itself would make sense. I play. Is this a sentence or not a sentence? While I play. This is not a sentence. While it does have the subject and verb from before, it has this word as well. And this makes these words need something else. Without that something else, these words no longer make sense. So it can't be a sentence because it's not a complete thought. While I play, you work. Is this a sentence or not a sentence? This is a sentence. It's just like this one, but it has that extra something that completes the thought. You work. I play while you work. While I play, you work. This is saying that these two things are connected in some way. Is this a sentence or not a sentence? While I play, you work, and she watches. This is a sentence. It's just like the sentence from before, and it has this extra part. And it fits with these other parts. And it all makes sense together to make a complete thought. While I play, you work, and she watches. Is this a sentence or not a sentence? And she watches. This is a sentence. While it does have this extra part here, which we would usually use to connect it to other parts of a sentence, it doesn't actually make this part need another part, like this word does. These are two different types of words. So this is still a sentence. It still makes sense. It's still a complete thought. Some grammar teachers and some books might tell you to avoid, that means don't use, a word like and to begin a sentence. It's true that you probably shouldn't do it often, but if you read a lot, you will find many people do this. They use a word like this, even when they're professional writers. You won't see them write a sentence like this. So this counts as a complete thought and a sentence. What is a clause? Is it something sharp? Is it a group of words? Is it a big man who brings presents? Or is it a group of words with a subject and verb? It's definitely this one. It's a group of words with a subject and verb. It's true that it is a group of words, but this definition is more specific and correct, so it's better. And these other two don't work. We don't mean claws, even though it sounds the same, because a claw is something sharp. And we don't mean Santa Claus, even though it sounds the same and is spelled the same. And we don't mean a phrase. A phrase is a group of words. A phrasal verb, like pick up, is a phrase. A prepositional phrase, in the garden, is a phrase. And you can have noun phrases, adjective phrases, different types of phrases, but we're not going to talk about those. A clause has a subject and a verb. So a clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. I play is a clause. I play and you work is two clauses. While I play you work is also two clauses, just like this example. While I play, you work, and she watches is three clauses. You can see here that I play has a subject, I, and verb play. So that makes it a clause. You is a subject, and work is a verb, so it's a clause. And she is a subject and watches is a verb, so that is also a clause. Now I'm going to tell you about the two main types of clauses. The first is the independent clause. Independent clauses have subjects and verbs just like other types of clauses. Independent clauses also make a complete thought. That means they can be by themselves and make sense, just like we talked about before. So I play is an independent clause. It has the subject I and the verb play, and it makes a complete thought. A dependent clause is the other main type of clause. An independent clause has the in at the beginning, which means it's not dependent. So dependent means that a clause needs something else, whereas an independent clause means that it does not need something else. So a dependent clause has a subject and a verb, just like other types of clauses, but it's incomplete. It does not have a complete thought. So while I play is a dependent clause. It has a subject, it has a verb, but this part makes it incomplete. It makes it dependent because now it needs this other part. So that's what a dependent clause is. It's a clause that has a subject, a verb, and is incomplete because it needs something else. Now we're going to talk about sentences again. We learned about independent clauses, so we need to change how we talk about sentences. You remember that a sentence has a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. But didn't an independent clause have these three things as well? Yeah, it did. So if we're going to change how we think of sentences, we're going to say that a sentence has all the things an independent clause has, but a sentence also ends with an end punctuation mark, like a period, an exclamation point, or a question mark. So sentences can contain multiple clauses, but when it ends with one of these marks, that's the end of the sentence in writing. When we're speaking, a lot of what we're talking about won't be as clearly separated or defined. But in writing, it's important to follow these rules as closely as possible. I play is a sentence. It's got a subject, a verb, a complete thought, and a period. I play new work has all those things too, even though it has multiple independent clauses. This is still not a sentence. We could put a period at the end, but that wouldn't make it a sentence because it still doesn't have a complete thought. So while I work, sorry, you're still not a complete sentence. While I work, you play is, because now it has everything it needs. It has a complete thought, and we can put the period at the end. Now we're going to talk about the different types of sentences. If you need to go back and review what we have talked about so far, do that now before we continue, because you will need to know everything from the past 10 minutes or so to understand what this next part is about. Finished? Okay. The first type of sentence is called a simple sentence, and there are other types too. The compound sentence, the complex sentence, and the compound complex sentence. First, the simple sentence. A simple sentence has one independent clause and nothing else. Sure, it can have other phrases, but it can't have any more clauses. I play is a simple sentence. So I can say I play, or I play guitar, or I play video games. It's a simple sentence because it has an independent clause, and only one of them. I play, a subject and a verb. A compound sentence has an independent clause, and an independent clause. So a compound sentence has two independent clauses. You could try to put a third or a fourth independent clause at the end of a compound sentence and make them all into one sentence, but you probably shouldn't. That might not make as much sense. So I can say I play and you work. I play guitar and you do your homework. And that's a compound sentence because it has two independent clauses. I play and you work. A complex sentence has an independent clause and a dependent clause. So a complex sentence has these two clause types, but it can also have more than one dependent clause. It's not like with a simple sentence or a compound sentence where you're limited. For a complex sentence, you can only have one independent clause, but you can have pretty much any number of dependent clauses that you can manage in the sentence. So while I play, you work is a complex sentence. It has a dependent clause and an independent clause. We would not be able to only say this. It wouldn't make sense. While I play, what? What happens while you play? Well, while I play, you work. Now they make sense together. A compound complex sentence has an independent clause, another independent clause, and a dependent clause, although it can have more than one dependent clause. So a compound complex sentence is really a compound sentence and a complex sentence connected, like this one. While I play, you work, and she watches. It's got the dependent clause, the independent clause, and another independent clause. So while I play guitar, you work, and she watches. We could make this one sentence and this a different sentence, but if there is a connection between these three ideas, then it makes sense to put them all in the same sentence. So if she's watching while I play and you work, then it makes sense to put them all together. Now let's review. We learned that a sentence has a subject, a verb, a complete thought, and has ending punctuation. We learned that a clause is a group of words with a subject and verb, that an independent clause has a subject and a verb but doesn't necessarily have ending punctuation. We learned a dependent clause has a subject and a verb but can't be a sentence. We learned that there are four types of sentences: a simple sentence, a compound sentence, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. Now, if you would like to go back and review what we talked about just now, you can do that before we move on to the next section, where we're going to look at examples. Okay? Here are examples of simple sentences, which are also independent clauses. I play, which we learned earlier, like I play guitar, is a simple sentence. You work is also a simple sentence. She watches. I play the guitar with Jeff. This is a simple sentence. It has the part we had before. It has an object for this verb, and it has a prepositional phrase. Even with this extra information, this is still a simple sentence because it only has one independent clause. This sentence, you work at night with Jeff, is also a simple sentence because it has the subject and the verb, and these other words, two prepositional phrases, don't add any more clauses. There are no verbs here, even though we have nouns. She watches us playing guitar. At first, this might look like it's more than a simple sentence because it has this word, which looks like a verb, but this is actually still a simple sentence. This is an object for this verb, and this is part of a phrase. It's not a clause. It would have its own subject if it were. Now, compound sentences. I play and you work. That's a compound sentence because it has two independent clauses. You work and she watches. Also a compound sentence. I play, but you work. This is a different word we have joining these two clauses, but it's still a compound sentence. You can play, or you can work. Also a compound sentence. You should have noticed by now that for compound sentences, we have a word here, here, and here after a comma that joins independent clauses to make a compound sentence. There are also words that begin dependent clauses, but they're different types of words, and you can look up what they are in a different video or in a textbook. You can play guitar, or you can do your homework. Another compound sentence, because there's a subject, a verb, and a subject, and a verb that makes up two independent clauses. I have an order, and it's for more guitars. Also a compound sentence. Now, complex sentences. While I play, you work. While I play guitar, you do your homework. Although I am a hard worker, I like to have fun too. Although is a word like while, and it means that these two ideas are contrasted. While can work in a similar way, but although always works that way. It's like saying but. But is only used to join independent clauses though. Although is used to start dependent clauses. So when I say, although I am a hard worker, I like to have fun too, I could write that sentence like, I am a hard worker, but I like to have fun too. They're just different options. This, however, is a dependent clause and couldn't be by itself. You would have to take off although and just say, I am a hard worker. I have a friend who plays guitar. So in this sentence, I'm talking about my friend, and this friend plays guitar. I could also say, I have a friend, my friend plays guitar. Or, I have a friend, and he plays guitar. Something like that. This is a dependent clause. It's got a subject and a verb. It's a different type of dependent clause than is in these two sentences, but it still makes a complex sentence like this. I don't know how he plays guitar so well. So in this sentence, I'm talking about someone, he, and this person plays guitar very well. He's really good at guitar. And I'm expressing that I don't understand how he's so good. He's so good, I find it unbelievable, or I find it difficult to understand. And this also has a third type of dependent clause, which you can learn about in a different video or in your textbook. Can you tell me what time it is? So in this sentence, I'm asking someone for the time. I could have just said, do you have the time? Or, what time is it? What time is it? But this is just a longer way of saying it. And in this sentence, I have the clause, the dependent clause, inside this question. So complex sentences can be questions too. Compound sentences and compound complex sentences could also be questions. Compound complex sentences. While I play, you work, and she watches. While I play guitar, you do your homework, and she watches us. While I play, you work, and she watches us to make sure that we stay out of trouble. So in these first two sentences, you have two independent clauses and one dependent clause. But in this third, I'm showing you that you can actually have more than one dependent clause. There's one here and one here. She watches us for a reason, and that reason is to make sure that we stay out of trouble. Maybe while we're playing and working, you sometimes play when you should be working, or I interrupt you while you're working or make it difficult, or something else happens, so she, some sort of authority figure, needs to watch us. Now practice. To practice these sentence types, you have two options. First, look for these sentence types in your reading and try to identify them. Write down some examples that you find. Also, produce sentences of these types using the examples in this video as your guide. These are the images I used for the video. I want to thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, if it taught you something, please like it or subscribe to my channel. If you need to know more about clauses, you can ask questions in the comments below. Thank you again for watching my video.